Hello and welcome to quick tip 42, and what we're doing in this quick tip is we're looking at two periods measured in a number of days, period 1 and period 2. If we look at the inputs to this quick tip, we've got Daysback1 and Daysback2. Period 1 is equal to a number of days in Daysback1 and period 2 number of days in Daysback2, and I've just made this simple for the sake of explaining what we're doing here. So I've got 2 days in the first period and 3 days in the second, and note this is on a 60-minute chart, so we're not talking about bars back, we're talking about days. And what we do is we find the lowest low during each period. Now the lines and the boxes here I've drawn manually, so these are not part of the program, but just demonstrate what we're trying to calculate. So we find out the low of this period, that's drawn red, and the low of period 2, which is drawn yellow. And then the logic of the program is if the red line is not lower than the yellow line, then for the day following period 1, we look to see if the price goes below effectively the low of period 2, in other words this yellow line, and if it does, we print some information and we set up an alert. So I've just created a fairly simple program to do this, which will be available at no cost to Gold Pass members. And as you can see, we've got these days back, the inputs. Now one of the very important things with doing this is because it is actually processing the chart, it's not magically finding this information. You do need to make sure that there are sufficient days back. So in this case, if we had 2 periods of 30 and 90, I would probably add several more days to that. So that would be 120 plus a little bit of space margin to go by, to make sure you've got enough bars on the chart. So let's look at the program. So what I've said is for each new day, in other words, today's this bar's date is different from the previous bar's date. In other words, we have a new date. Then we do several things. The cross recorder, this is the thing that we tells us when a cross has occurred, so that we don't keep flagging the cross over and over again. We set that to false. Low period 1, we first of all find the low of the first period, and we need to set that value to an arbitrary high period. Because what our logic is going to be, we're going to go through each day in that period, and we're going to say low period 1 is equal to the lesser of min list, low period 1, and low D with the input as value 1. Now low D is an inbuilt function that tells us the low of the day. So for example, low D round brackets with 1 in the middle would be the low of yesterday. Low D with 2 in the brackets, that would be the low of the day before yesterday, and so forth. So clearly if that value is less than the current value of low pivot 1, then we set low pivot 1 to be the new value. Having done that, having gone through all those days back, then we now know the low period 1, and we do something very similar for the second period, except now we have to be a little careful. We say from days back 1 plus 1, because we don't want to look at that days back again, 2 days back 2 plus days back 1, and we did very similar logic, except this time we're trying to find low period 2. Having done that, we can now look at the logic as whether there's been a cross. So the logic was that low period 1 has got to be greater than low period 2. In our example, that means that the red line has got to be above the yellow line, and then we're simply saying if the low of the bar here, if the low is less than low period 2, and in other words it's gone below that value, then the cross recorded, we will also set an alert and print some information there to set the cross recorded to be true. So that resets at the beginning of each day. So each day we go through each bar and see if there has been a cross. So anyway, it's fairly straightforward, simple program. Let me know if you see any bugs or faults or mistakes, and please join the Markplex email list, and also subscribe to this YouTube channel if this sort of material is of interest to you. Thank you.